Hey there. Today we're going to be following this tutorial on the Strapi blog about how to build a static blog with Gatsby and Strapi. So Gatsby and Strapi work really well together. Their strengths really complement each other, with Gatsby being a static site generator and Strapi being a headless CMS. So let's get to it. This first video is going to focus more on getting Strapi up and running locally on your machine. So there is some introductory information here you can read about Gatsby and Strapi. Then there's some prereqs that you're going to need to be able to do this. You'll need to have Node running. I'll have a package manager. I'll be using npm, Python for the SQLite database, and then Git. All right, so it wants you to first set up your project folder here using some command lines. And then we're going to install Strapi using this yarn command here. I'm not going to do it this way. You can do it this way. It will work. I'm going to be using Github to first set up a repo. So I'll set up a new repo here. We'll call it Strapi Gatsby YouTube. Make it public. We'll have a README file. Put a license on. Create the repo. There we go. Okay, so we've got a new repo here. And then what I'm going to do next is I am going to get this running in VS Code. I'm going to clone this repo. And there it is. I'll put it in my folder here. And we'll open it. All right, there we go. So we got the README file here, Strapi Gatsby YouTube, just like here. So we've successfully cloned our repo into VS Code, where we will be working on it more. Okay, so next we're going to actually create our Strapi app. You could use this command. I'm going to be using this one over here. They both work. So I'll use the npx create Strapi app command here, and let me just open a terminal window, paste that in, and I will rename this. Instead of my project, I would call it backend. And then we will choose quick start. All right, so now it's installing all of our dependencies. This might take a minute or two, and then we'll be back. After this is done, Strapi will automatically open up a registration page for us to register our super admin. And here we go. So after everything was installed, this screen pops up automatically, allows us to register our super user. So we'll just put in some information here. And there we go. We are now signed in with our user administrator, and this is the back end. Welcome to the back end to Strapi, where you can create all your content, put all of your information in there, and it will automatically use that to construct an API that your front end can then consume. So let's go back here and see what we want to do next. Okay, so we've got done all of this. We should commit it. Good idea. Perfect. Okay, that's been committed and pushed up to GitHub. Now it wants us to create an admin, which we already did. So the reason why this is different here is because they are assuming that you're using this yarn command here with the no run flag. So if you use the no run flag, then that registration screen does not pop up. And instead, you get to have the joy of creating your admin information here using the command line. But we didn't bother doing that. Okay, so our backend is already up and running. We're already signed in, and so we should be seeing this. And if we skip the tour, that's what we see. Okay, so that's where we are here. We're following along. Okay, so now we want to build our content. And we're going to have a few different types of content. The most important one is probably our posts. Okay, so our posts are going to have, well, each post will have a title, a description, the actual content, right, a slug, a cover, image, an author, and a category. So this is the kind of information we're going to have to add into Strapi. This link here does not work. Don't worry about it. We don't need it. We're actually going to create 3 different types of collections, right? Posts, categories, and authors. So let's rearrange things a little bit here. And okay, so we're going to, in the admin panel, select content type builder right here. Okay, so this is going to allow us to add new types of content types. We're going to create new collection type. Let's minimize this. Here we are. And we're going to call this a post. All right, so here we are, post. You'll see it automatically gives you the singular and plural form. And here we have the advanced settings. We have draft and publish. We're going to keep this checked. What this will allow us to do is it will allow us to create a post and then save it, but that will be saved as a draft. And then we need to press publish to actually make it publicly available on the API. So that's a nice function for blog posts. We'll keep that there and we'll press continue. Okay, now we get to select what kinds of fields we want to add to our post collection type, right? The first one we'll do is we will select text, okay? And we're gonna call this title. So this is gonna be our title. And this is going to be a short text. We go to advanced settings. There are other things we can add here. I will set required and unique fields. So the title must be present and it must be unique. Now we're going to press add another field. Another text field. This one's going to be the description. And this one's going to be a long text. And I'm not going to bother with the advanced settings for now. That's good here. We'll add another field and another text field. We're going to call this cover. It's going to be a short text. Now, what we're actually going to do with this text field is we're going to put in a URL that links to the image for the cover. So that's why we're using a text field here. There are other ways to do this. You could actually use like an image field if you wanted to. But we'll just use text for now, and then we'll click on add another field. And now we're going to select rich text. Now, here's where it's easy to make a mistake with this tutorial, because in Strapi version 4, there are 2 different types of rich text fields. You have this one, let me go back, which is using the JSON-based rich text editor, and it saves the rich text data as a JSON object. That's not what you want to use. Instead, you want to scroll down a little bit and see rich text markdown. This is the previous version, and it still works fine, where you type in markdown text. And so that's what we're going to use here. Okay, we're going to call this content. All right. Perfect. So yeah, the JSON version, it also works well, but the content that we're going to be adding in here is all done in Markdown. So that's what we're going to follow for this tutorial. And using this is very similar, but you're going to have to parse it in a different way as well. So that's something that's also worth looking into maybe in a future video. All right, so now we're done with the content field. Let's select date. We'll call this date, and we'll choose this first type here. It's fine, doesn't really matter. And we'll add another field. And now we want the UID, so our identifier. And we're going to call this slug, right? So it's going to be our slug. And the slug is going to be attached to the title, right? So it's going to try and copy the title to create the slug. And that's the last field we need for our post content type. All right, so now that we're done with that, we can press save, and when we do, the server restarts, right? So every time you create a new content type, the server has to restart. All right, let's create another collection type here. We're going to call this author, right? Authors, perfect. And we're going to add 2 text fields and relation fields. So the first one is going to be the author's name. And yeah, I'll put that required and unique. You don't have to, but it should be, right? So that's the name here. And then the next one is going to be the avatar. Again, this is going to hold a URL to an image for the avatar image for this author. So that's fine. We'll click add another, and the last field is going to be a relation field. So this is where you get to connect the different collection types to each other. And here we're going to be connecting authors to posts, and we're going to use a one-to-many relationship, right? So one author is connected, can have many posts, but one post can only have one author, right? So it's a one-to-many relationship, and this is just the name we're going to use for the field inside the content type. Okay, I believe we are done with the author collection type. So we'll finish here and then click save, which will trigger a restart. Perfect. Okay, let's add our final collection type, and that's going to be called category. Let's continue. And here we're going to have a text ID and relation field. So text is going to be the name of the category, and that's going to be a short text. I'm going to again make this required and unique. We'll add another field here. That's going to be our ID. And we'll also call this slug, and we'll attach this to the name. Okay, so it should copy the name to create the slug. And then finally, we want another relationship here. So here we're connecting categories to posts. So categories to posts. And again, we want a one-to-many, right? So one category can have many posts. Each post has only one category. Now, when you're doing your own project, you might want to have a many-to-many relationship. So you can always change that for your specific needs. But in this tutorial, it's a one-to-many. All right, perfect. Let's finish that and save it with our final restart. All right, so that's setting up all of our collection types. We can click on post and see that this should match what we've got here. Title, description, content, cover and content are swapped around. That's fine. Then we've got date, slug, author, category. Yeah, okay. So I think we've got everything there, and it's looking pretty good. So let's just do a quick commit. Added collection types. And sync that up. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to add our posts. So the way we add our posts is by using the data in this link here. So if we click on this link, it's going to open up a bunch of sample posts with lots of content and images and all this wonderful stuff that we can copy into our Strapi CMS. I believe there's like 5 or 6 posts total. Now, if you click over here on the edit, it's going to show you the actual markdown that was used to generate this, and that's going to make it a lot easier to copy and paste things over into Strapi. So I suggest you do that. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add all of the different authors, right? So now what we want to do is instead of building more different types of content, we're going to add content. So now we go to the content manager, and we're going to go to author, which is here. And this is where we can add new entries, right? So we can add new authors here, we can add new categories, add the actual posts right here. All right, so let's do that. Let's add in these authors. Now, these are all the fields we just set up, right? The name, the avatar, and the posts. And what we want to do is we want to get this information from this markdown. I believe there's only 2 different authors for the sample data. For this first post, the author is Megan, right? And the avatar is right here, the author avatar. Okay, so we'll just copy this URL, paste that over, and save it. Okay, now we have to also publish it to make it go live. All right, so there we are. Now go back to the authors here. Oh, sorry. Here we are. Okay, so here's Megan. And let's create another entry for the other author, who is Paul. Okay, got Paul here, and here's Paul's avatar. Perfect. Let's save that and publish it. Okay, so now we have our two authors. They're ready to go, and they're both published, so they will be visible when we query for information through the API on authors. All right, so that's Megan. Next, we're going to do the same thing for the category, right? So we see that there are three categories here. We've got AI, Strapi, and Tech. So we'll go to category. We'll create a new entry. And yeah, this first one is going to be Tech, right? Now the slug, we could type in Tech, or we could just press this regenerate button here, and that will copy the name, because when we set this up, we said it was going to be attached to the name field. And so that's what it does here. It copies that over. And let's save that. Let's go and we'll add another category. This one is AI. Again, we'll regenerate it. Perfect. And save that. And then we'll finally create the third category, which is, I believe, Strapi. Yeah, that's the last one. Okay. Strapi, and we will regenerate and save. Okay, now one thing to be careful of is that these are all drafts, right? There, I didn't press the publish button. What you can do is you can now publish them here, and it'll just ask you to confirm. Yes, now they're published. Okay, so that's something you can do. Now, one thing, if you don't want to go through this added step of creating the draft and then publishing, what you can do is when you're creating your content types here, let's, for example, if we were to do a new content type here and call it co-author, right? You could uncheck draft and publish in the advanced settings, right? So if you uncheck this, then you no longer need to go through the second additional step of pressing publish. Instead, whenever you create that new entry, it will automatically be published. So that's a way to sort of speed things up a little bit when you're creating the collection type. But that's fine. We didn't do that, so we will just have to press publish every time. Okay, so that was authors done, category is done. What's left is the actual post content, which is going to be a little bit more in depth. So now we're going to add entries for our posts, and we're just going to be copy pasting a lot of information from our markdown. Okay, so we got a title, description, cover, content, date, slug, and then author and category. So we kind of have to add all this information in. So we can see here the title is right there, and we paste that over. Notice that the title and the description for these sample posts are all the same. So we'll just copy that again for description. Next, we want the cover image, which is right here, this URL. So we'll copy that over. And then we will have the content. So the content is all of, right here, right? It's all of this markdown. So we'll paste that over. And if you press preview mode, you'll see that it looks good with all the headers and all of that formatting in the markdown. Okay, next we're going to have to put in dates. Now there's no date here, so we just put in something. I'll just put in the 1st, February 1st. And now for the slug, we can regenerate this and it will automatically use the title, right, to create the slug, which is really great. And then we also want to add the author and category. Okay, so the author here is Megan and the category is tech. Perfect. Okay, so we can save that. So there we go, it is saved, and I'm just going to click publish here, so it is published. All right, so that's our first post. We're going to have to do the same thing for all of the other posts, and it's just copy and pasting, so I don't want to waste too much time with that. I'll do that off camera, but one thing I want you to notice is that I kind of find it a little bit annoying, the order of the fields here, because I don't want to scroll back and forth between copying the content and scrolling back up and figuring out who the author is and what the category is supposed to be. So I want to rearrange the fields here in Strapi, which you can do when you press configure the view, right? So when you do this, you can drag the date and the slug and the author and the category, you can drag all of this around to reorder it, which just makes it a little bit more convenient when you're copy pasting. And save that. Perfect. Let's go back. And so now you see all of that stuff that was down here with the slug and the date and all that, it's up here, right? So it's really nice. And if this is a bigger view, you get more of a grid pattern. So this is just going to make it a little bit easier for you to copy paste. And if you're having a client access the backend CMS, then they might have a better layout for how they want to fill in the information. So I'm just going to copy paste over the rest of the data for the entries real quick and see it in a second. Okay, so I just went ahead and copy pasted over all of the post information. One thing, you want to make sure all the posts are actually published, right? It can be easy to draft one and forget to press publish. So just make sure you did that. And I believe that's done. So we can close this and let's continue on with the tutorial. All right, this is all good. Now we need to allow access to our API, right? What we're going to do is we're going to click on settings, and then under general, right, we're going to over here, yeah, settings under general, and then under users and permissions plugin over here, we go to roles, and then here in roles we have public, and we want to click on that and edit, right? So here is where we're allowing a public API to access, a public website or front end, our front end to access the APIs, right? So here we're going to click on author, and we're going to want to allow our front end to do find and find one, right? So it's going to essentially be able to query either single entries for the author or query all of the authors and get that data from our API, right? And you can see the API route here that you're going to allow. So this is going to be the find one, and this is going to be the find all, right? So this is the query. We're not going to allow our front end to create or delete or update any of the entries, right? So that all happens here in the CMS in Strapi, not on the front end. We're going to do the same thing for category, allow our front end to query the categories and also the posts, right? We're going to be able to allow our front end to query the posts either individually or collectively. So that's what we do here. Find and find one, repeated for category, author, and posts. It's probably one of these should have been posts. And then we're also going to do the same thing for the content types builder, which is right here. And we're going to select all. Perfect. Okay, so let's save that. And now we can test this. We can, if we go to this URL right here, we should get a response. And we do. Perfect. We get this huge, big block of data, this big JSON that is going to be a list of all of our posts and their content. That's what we got. And what I did was I have a little add-on here that will allow me to view the JSON a little bit more pretty. So you can see that this is the data that we're getting back when we go to the posts URL right here through the APIs. So we got the ID. We have a whole bunch of attributes. Attributes is where like all the content that we put in is stored, right? So otherwise, at the top level, each object, each post just has the ID and attributes property. You really have to open up attributes, and then once you're in there, you get the title, description, the cover URL, the actual markdown content, right? The date, the slug, and then also this extra information created, updated, and published timestamps. So there you go. That allows you to query data. And of course, if you wanted to just query post number 1, you can just put that in. Oh, look, switch to dark mode. Beautiful. Okay, so now we only have the first post. We don't have all of them, right? The second post. We should do the same thing with, what do we call it, categories? There we go. All the categories that we have here. Notice there's also this metadata here. So we have the data and then the metadata, which has some pagination information. And then we could also do what's it, authors, right? Yeah, so this is all of the authors. And we could just query a single one if we wanted to, just Paul. right? So that's our API. Our API is functioning. Strapi is working. That's pretty good. If you wanted to use just a REST API to query your data to the from the front end, you could use this. But we're going to set up the GraphQL plugin for Strapi, which will allow us to use a GraphQL kind of query syntax to get our data instead. So again, I'm not using Yarn. I'm going to be using NPM. Now, there's a few ways to find this plugin. You could, run this yarn command right there, or we can go to the marketplace, right? And we go here, and I believe we can just search GraphQL. There we go. So this, if you click here, you're going to get more information about how this works, links to NPM or GitHub. And then you have this installation command here for NPM or Yarn. So we're just going to copy this, right? We're going to copy this, or you can copy it directly here. Copy this install command. So we're going to do that. And let's go back to our VS Code, and let's open up a new PowerShell here. We're going to cd into, we put this in backend. Right, so let's do that correctly, and then we paste this. Okay, so we're going to add in our Strapi plugin for the GraphQL, and there we go. We're done. So if we go in here, we can see our new package.json in the backend has this GraphQL plugin right here. Perfect. Okay, so that's what we got. We just installed that, and let me commit that. Just like that. Okay, there you go, added GraphQL. And then you should restart the server. Now ours is already going. Let's restart it just to be safe. All right, let's go back here. Let's cancel that out, and then we'll restart it. Okay, so let's go into our backend folder here, and we will restart the Strapi server. Perfect. Okay, we are back. Okay, we are now back, and now if we go to this URL, localhost port 1337 /GraphQL, we should see this. Okay, so we've got the GraphQL playground, which allows us to write GraphQL queries and then actually run them in the browser, right? So we want to test it out, and it's giving us a big query here to test out. So let's do that and press play. And here we go. We get a response, right? This is the data. We're querying all the posts, right? And then inside the data, we want the attributes, the title, description, content, date, slug. That's what we get, right? Now, what's interesting is that with GraphQL, we're able to dig deeper into the different levels. So if we went back and we just used that original REST API call, right? API/posts, right? If we did this, and compare, yeah, this is what we're supposed to get. And then, yeah, this is pretty much the end of Strapi. We've got everything working. Okay, so let's just compare the API, result from the API call and what we got with the GraphQL. With GraphQL, we got a lot of the same things, right? So we have the data, right? So post data, and then inside data, we have attributes, title, description, content. Content is here. Cover should be somewhere. Cover is here, right? Whatever order we wrote it in. We get our date. We get all of this information back, but we also get this author data. We don't have that here, right? And so we're able to grab the author, and not only that, we can get data from the author. We can get the attributes here. We get the name of the author, the avatar, right? And then same thing for the category. We can get the category name and slug. So by using GraphQL, you can dig deeper into this data object and get all the connections following the relations that we set up to see what all of the other authors and categories are associated with this post. We could also do it the other way, right? We could start with getting an author and then also see what posts are connected to that author. So that's why GraphQL is a lot of fun to work with. But okay, I think, yeah, that's all we got here for the Strapi setup. And then next we're going to set up Gatsby. Great. Okay, I'll see you then.